Bernie Sanders is a rare politician in America who I probably agree with over 90% of the time, maybe upwards of 95% of the time. But on the issue of Israel, Palestine, he's actually very disappointing. And apparently a town hall event he did recently was full of people who agree with me.
Hamas is sending missiles into Israel. Look at that. And you know where some of those missiles are coming from? They're coming from populated areas. That's a fact. Hamas has used money that came into Gaza for construction purposes, and God knows they need roads and all the things that they need, and used some of that money to build these very sophisticated tunnels into Israel for military purposes.
For survival purposes.
Okay, one second.
Yes,
No, I don't want to be interrupted. The question was asked. It's a fair question, and I'm trying to. Look, if you don't,
yes, they did.
you don't.
Gaza is like
Excuse me. Shut up. You don't have the microphone. You've asked. You know, I don't want police officers here.
You're going to arrest people?
No, I'm not going to arrest people. But are you going to allow us? Are you going to allow us to have a discussion? What do you think?
You come down here. You're up there. Come down and be democratic. So I can discuss it with people.
Are you asking for the point?
Occupied populations have the right to resist.
All right. You're entitled to your view. You've asked the question, I'm answering it. This is called democracy.
Let him finish.
All right?
I would thought you were
All right, I am answering a question, and I do not want to be disturbed and disrupted. All right? You're not the only people here. Kathy asked a reasonable question, and I'm trying to answer it, and I don't want to be disrupted. All right? In my view, you're entitled to your view. I am entitled to my view. In my view, Hamas has done those things, and on top of that, Hamas is very clear. Their view is that Israel should not have a right to exist. That's the fact.
bullshit.
All right. Hey, you know what?
It's not a dirty word.
Okay. You know,
It's not just a
you know,
terrorist group. It's a service organization.
all right.
It's a word
Furthermore,
that means something to people
okay.
like Israel.
Can I finish my remarks?
Come.
And the answer is,
Finish.
if you can't come to a meeting and ask the question, then please don't come to me. All right. Furthermore, this issue of Gaza is not the only issue right now in that region. As some of you may have noticed, there's a group called ISIS. You know what ISIS is?
Yes.
Excuse me.
I can't believe the great Bernie Sanders just used one of the dumbest talking points I've ever heard in my life. It's almost like Netanyahu took some index cards, jotted down talking points, and gave them to Bernie Sanders. You know, you can focus on us, but ISIS is fucked up. That helps your case to compare the government of Israel to ISIS and to say, well, they're worse. I never knew that was an argument, that, hey, these people are super, super fucked up, so maybe we could be just a little fucked up. You're almost admitting defeat when you make that point. And also, they're not mutually exclusive. It's not like, well, either you idiots can focus on Israel doing some fucked up things, or you could focus on ISIS. No, there's a lot of time, okay? There are plenty of issues in the world. You can also talk about the minimum wage and health care. Two separate issues, you could have valid opinions on both of them. Yes, you could have opinions on Israel, Palestine, and ISIS. But is anybody in that room going, I'm pro-ISIS? I would like to let you know, I'm on the side of ISIS. Nobody's doing that. So when you bring that up, it's such a pathetic attempt to deflect from the conversation at hand. People have brought that up to me. Look, here's the thing. When people say stuff to me on Twitter, I try to respond as much as I can, but I'm very busy. And if I'm not responding to you, it's one of two things. Either I'm very busy and I mean well, but I can't respond to everybody. I don't have enough time to respond to everybody. Or your point is so fucking stupid that I'm busy laughing at it and I'm not going to respond to you to dignify you. And a lot of the comments I've gotten, you know, are of that nature. Like somebody today said something insanely stupid. Kyle, yeah, you defend Palestinians, but in Gaza, they'd probably kill you. You're an atheist. Yeah, they also might kill me in rural Mississippi. That doesn't mean we should let Tennessee occupy Mississippi and take some of it. I mean, what a bad argument! But the thing's, when you're so wrong, the levels you have to stoop to in order to respond, you're just exposing how weak your central premise is. So let's go through some more here. An area where I agree with Bernie Sanders is when he says, look, it's fucked up that Hamas is firing rockets into civilian populations. Yes, I agree with that. Now, what they would argue is, just get the fuck off our land and we'll stop. But either way, I disagree because I'm always against violence against civilians on every side in every conflict, okay? So that's fucked up and that shouldn't happen. Well, now, when it comes to the Hamas tunnels, he's both right and wrong. He's right that they use it to bring in armament, and then they use that to attack Israelis, but he doesn't pay any lip service or doesn't pay any mind to what the person shouted out from the audience there, which is, it's also for survival. That's a fact. Look, I've covered the story in depth. I've given you specific numbers, okay, about how life-saving, necessary stuff, food, water, building materials, etc., come through those tunnels. So to purely demonize those tunnels, look, if you want to destroy the tunnels, fine, but get rid of the blockade. You can't have it both ways. You can't have the blockade and also get rid of the tunnels, then you're just saying, fuck you, starve to death. And maybe that's what Netanyahu and the Likud government wants. In fact, in many ways, they're bordering on just flat out saying that. And then when the only point that I really didn't like when the audience made it, one guy said, "Come down here and be democratic and talk to us." All right, calm down, dude. He's the politician who's there. So yeah, he gets a microphone and he gets to stand in front. You want a microphone? Go fucking run for office and win. Okay? That's a silly argument. Don't bring that up. When it comes to this point is central to the argument that somebody shouts out from the audience. She said, occupied populations have a right to resist. Well, isn't that what it all comes down to? Okay? Look, you can't take a position on Israel-Palestine unless you know the history of the region. Okay? And I know a lot of people who listen to the show disagree with me on this. I've been convinced by the evidence I've seen. Okay? The reality is the 1947 borders, which is the original partition plan, which created Israel, it was a much smaller area than what they have now. Now, the Israelis argue, well, when we got there, the Arabs attacked immediately. And that may be true, but that doesn't mean that you can not just defend yourself, but like beat them back and then take more of their land. And then beat them back again and take more of their land in 1967. Because then you become wrong. Do you not see that? Look, of course, you're not going to get rid of Israel, just like in the U.S., we're not going to leave and give all the land to the Cherokee and the Algonquins. It's just not practical at this point in time. But does that mean that there shouldn't be some concessions and that there shouldn't be a two-state solution where both sides get UN recognition and statehood? Of course that's what you need. Of course that's what the answer is. And with Israel, what they've done from 1947 and onward is they've just expanded and expanded and expanded and expanded to the point where the Palestinians are in Gaza and they're fucking pissed off about it and it's super tiny. And they're in the West Bank and there's still fucking settlements being built over there. So you have to stop. And yes, they feel occupied. That's why they're fucking angry. But there's no acknowledgement of that from Bernie Sanders or from people who defend the extremely right-wing government and the Likud party in Israel. And then when he says, another one of the most vacuous talking points ever, Hamas doesn't want Israel to exist. Right. And Israel doesn't want Palestine to exist, and they literally blocked them from existing. It happened at the UN like a year and a half ago, where the Palestinians said, okay, look, we've been talking to you, the government of Israel and the government of the U.S., for such a long time, trying to get recognition and trying to be considered a state, okay? And you keep saying no and slapping us across the face, so now we're just going to go to the UN. Fuck you, we're bypassing you and going to the UN in a peaceful way to say, can we get statehood? And then what happened? The U.S. and Israel go, fuck you, we're blocking it. Well, then how do you expect peace if you're telling them, we don't recognize your right to exist, and we're going to block your right to exist? And then, ironically, the talking point they use is, well, Hamas doesn't view Israel as having a right to exist. But what about you? And then, look, it's also not necessarily true because the Palestinians have admitted, well, if we get a two-state deal and if we get some more land and get some borders and get recognition, well, then yes, we'll say, okay, you exist. So, look, man, Bernie Sanders is a great guy. He means well. He's a smart dude. And look, I'm not sure I even agree with the tactics of the protesters there, if you will, where you shout out. I'm always 50-50 on protests. It's like when you're for the cause, yes, you like it. When you're against the cause, you think it's the most obnoxious thing ever. So I'm not going to stake a position on that and say, I'm going to defend it or be against it. I'm 50-50 on protest methods, okay? That wasn't too out of hand, but it was maybe bordering it. But Bernie Sanders is a good guy, and he means well, and he's smart. But overall, you can't help but say his position on this is a little silly. You can't be a progressive on everything and then agree with the incredibly far right-wing government of Israel, because then you're just not a progressive on that issue. You're just not. You're a neoconservative on that issue. It's not that hard, man. Look, the most conservative position I can accept and respect is somebody saying, let's do the 1967 borders, which still gives Israel a majority of the land, and give UN statehood to the Palestinian state and the Israeli state. That's the most conservative position I can accept, okay? And then I'm in favor of a slightly more liberal position. The 1947 borders give statehood and UN status to both. So that's the parameters of the debate that I see fitting, and Bernie Sanders is nowhere near. He's way off in the spectrum, somewhere wandering in the right wing.